everybody, and welcome back to Talking Behaviour, where I am Charlie, and with me is
James. Hello.
and we are going to be your hosts for today, where we are going to be doing the second of our 3-episode series on stimulation, stimulatory behaviour, self-stimulation, where we will be talking about overstimulation, which is the process where we go over the regulatory barrier and basically start becoming more affected by stimuli inside of our environment. We become more sensitive to them, and because of that, it takes less for us to go over our regulatory barrier fully. Okay, so we talked a little bit before about the fact that you have regulation in the middle, right? Which is this process of you're receiving all the inputs that you need from your environment to be in like a normalized level, and this causes you to be regulated and not constantly seeking to lower your sensory level or up your sensory level. When you get too high, you're getting too much input from the environment, more than you're used to, you enter a process of being overstimulated. Okay, you have this situation where you are receiving all of these sensory stimuli. It might be that the lights seem brighter to you than they normally do. It might be that you are feeling air on your skin more than you would normally. This could make you feel like your skin is itching, right? These are the signs that I've found personally for me when I'm feeling overstimulated are an indicator that I need to get into an environment that I can control my sensory stimuli a lot better. And we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that some inputs push you up and some inputs actually calm you. Okay, that's something which is a little bit of a distinction compared to what we were talking about before, because we wanted a little bit of a more simple explanation of the fact that you get something that pushes you over, that's good, and then you need to go down again back to get to regulation. What we also have is we have these things that we would call like a calming input, right? And this will help us to lower back down to the bottom. There's a kind of classic example that they use inside of SEND intervention when you're being trained in any form of physical restraint, right? They teach you about the fact that light touch can be stimulatory, right, and cause you to become overstimulated, but deep pressure, right, can be calming and actually help you kind of lower back down, right? This also can be tied to like a physiological thing if you think about it, because we have oxytocin, which is this chemical that gets produced when we get physical contact from other people, which is the same one we get from love, right? It makes us feel that love feeling that we get, and because of that, oxytocin can kind of be viewed as like related to this process, because when you are in that elevated level, you might want to get an oxytocin boost to kind of lower you back down, release cortisol, which produces fear, right? And then just get yourself back into that level where you can kind of regulate it. So from a sensory input side of things, you look at it as like you're over stimulated and you require these kind of calming inputs, but you can also go from a physiological kind of scientific side of it and go, actually it's also just as much that your body is producing cortisol when you get scared in a situation, and then you get oxytocin to cancel it out and put you back into the beginning. Yeah. Cool. So this is interesting because this ties into this idea of sensory diets that we were talking about, right? If you are able to identify in a person a consistent set of behaviors that they show when they are overstimulated, they are avoiding all of the light stuff as much, they're not looking into it, they might be
Covering their ears.
yeah, or kind of like seeking to excite themselves even more if they have a history of trying to push themselves over the level, which some people very much do. There are different signifiers for different types of people, and there are also different responses for different types of people. Some of them are just physiological, so things like that physical contact, if it's the right kind of contact from someone that you like, can actually be a good thing. Some of them are more specific to the person, like one person might like the kind of input that they get from fiddling with a sensory toy, or another person might find it more regulatory to actually be very soft and gentle in feeling the outside of an item that they have on their hand, so that they can feel the minute details of it, rather than what they were doing if they were understimulated, where they're trying to get more out of it and pressuring it into their hand, right?
Yeah.
So you have this overstimulation thing where you might see that they're very much on edge, right, and nervous and anxious and getting into a state where they are very easy to react, right? And this basically gives you this kind of scale where you've got, where we talked about before, 3 levels, right? And then there's these 2 levels which are actually above it, which is it's above the level of toleration and it's below the level of toleration, right? Above the level of toleration might be an example of pain, right? Where if you get an input that is so high that it implies to your body that you might be maimed or physically injured for a long time, your body just reacts to get you away from it, right? And that's an intensity of stimuli beyond what your body thinks is safe for you, right? And then you have, well, we'll go over that with understimulation when we get to it. Check in here next time, guys. But this gives you kind of the solution that you get for people. This is probably the useful bit for parents, right? Is if you can find calming activities or calming items or things which have a calming effect on that specific person and provide them to them when they are in an overstimulated state, this can help them go back to regulation, right? So you end up with these things where it might be that you have these consequence-based strategies, these things that come after you start seeing a set of behaviors that indicate someone is overstimulated. Okay, how about we do something that requires you to focus in on, what's in front of you. We play a matching game where you put these tokens on to the correct squares, and you can get something fun out of it at the end. But focus in on that might take you out of that body feeling that you're in and help you get back to that point of regulation out of overstimulation. Yeah. Or other people who might not be able to do that might require physical inputs. They might ask to have their hands squeezed or to get like an arm rub or something like that. It kind of depends on the person and obviously upon the appropriateness of the thing that they need.
Yeah.
Sometimes to regulate, people end up normalizing a level of input which is not providable by the environment. Right? It might be that when you become overstimulated, you need so much pressure through your hands that you would cause another person to bleed if you were trying to get it out of them.
Okay.
Right? This is when it goes too far, right? And the problem is mostly that this person has done that before and it's been successful, and it's the only thing that they know that gets them out of it, and so it's the first option when they get to it. I have had people that I work with who really do not want to hurt you, but when they are overstimulated, they are coming to just get something, but your hands would be dead by the time that you're done. So you have to teach something else, right? You have to find something that they can get that input from their hand that doesn't require another person, right?
And I guess you can only really do that through trial and error of trying different ways to bring them back down.
And minimizing risk, right? That's the secondary part, is you should never risk normalizing a level that you cannot reproduce, right? If you are going to go into a situation to replace something which you cannot reproduce and you offer something else, be ready to get yourself out of it before the thing which they got it out of it before happens, because that will mean reinforcing that behavior, reinforcing that cycle, making it even harder to get that person out of it again, right? So sometimes it's a process of being very well trained. If you are very good at physical disengagement, which I was particularly wriggling, I guess you could say, it can be very difficult to get you, right? And so I used to be the person that got sent into some of these rooms to try these things out, and it was often a process of, present the thing, stop anything from happening to you, try and redirect them towards it, and if not, get yourself out as quickly as physically possible, because you cannot normalize that level of interaction to a person, especially if they weren't getting it before, if it had been avoided, and now you don't avoid it. Now it's happened. Now it's going to go.
And they're going to know that that's happening.
And when you enter the room, you're the only one who's provided it.
Yeah.
Which means you're the next target. Right? And it's not really targeting in like I want to hurt you. It's here's the person who gives me the thing I need.
Yeah.
Right? That's how sad it is. And that's why it's heartbreaking when you're in these situations, because it's like, I can tell that you need this, but I can't give this to you.
Yeah.
I can give you this instead. Right? And, as you say, it is trial and error.
Yeah. And just slightly on a slight diversion here, are the behaviours that you see from somebody who is overstimulated and understimulated, are they the same behaviour? Are they generally the same reactions? Or do you, to know if somebody is over or understimulated, do you have to know what has happened to them and know them already?
I would say that you would want to assess each person individually, because what a person does when they're overstimulated will be individual to them, right? In each of these situations, generally you won't see them do the same set of behaviours for overstimulated that they do for understimulated, right? Because the things that you're trying to do in those two situations are opposite, and so the behaviour you do would be
generally opposite.
Yeah, right. It might be that sometimes you can't fully identify which of those things that you're in if you don't have full perception of it or understanding of it, and then you might try to do an overstimulation thing when you're understimulated and push yourself even further down and cause yourself to become kind of depressed, really, or reach that top point of like, I can't get anything, I'm just
More on that later, folks.
More on that. But yeah, we've got a lot from this, I think, and that's it's a very difficult concept to give because I think the way that it looks is opposite to the way it actually is. Like when you're overstimulated, you're kind of like rubbing at yourself and kind of touching and doing this, and it's kind of pushing you over the level a lot of the time. But that's often because the person doesn't know they're overstimulated. They're just trying to do different things to try and stop whatever's happening to them. And that's why you get a professional in to find the right stuff and then do it. This is often supported by an occupational therapist and an occupational therapy report, which will give you kind of that particular person's profile.
Yeah.
I'm just a different type of person, so I kind of look at this in a holistic point of view from all the different angles.
Just touching base on that touch one, just as a specific example, it seems so odd to me, or it's such a cool fact to know that I would have always thought that all touch is stimulating, and I would have thought if somebody's being overstimulated by that touch, then the best thing or the best output or the best outcome would be to, or the thing that would lead to the best outcome would be leaving them alone.
That does help, but that's not always the quickest way of getting it down, right?
Okay.
Because if you weren't able to get the right input to lower you down, if you weren't able to do something which is directly helping you to regulate that sensory input, what you might do is you might try and minimize adding any input until you can process what's going on to you right now, which is what you're describing. Your level will slowly go down into regulation, which, as long as you can control all the stimuli, right? Because if something unexpected happens, you might shoot straight back up again, right? What a calming activity or something like deep pressure does is it quickens this process because it allows, if we're looking at it from a physiological level and saying it would produce oxytocin if you like the person, right? Just that, getting rid of the cortisol is going to help push your stress levels down, which is going to help you to regulate, right? And also take a thing off of your plate, allowing you to maybe process the sensory information a little bit better. If you think about it, when you're in a relationship, you getting a back rub from someone doesn't stimulate you as much as them kind of like running their hand up your arm, right? Two different forms of stimulation, two different things. One's calming, the other one not so much.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions, James?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Overstimulation is an interesting topic, I think. It's one where I would say it's probably the bigger risk of the two versus understimulation. I would say because of the fact that it goes near the I'm being pushed to my pain tolerance thing, right? It's like that's the body reacts more intensely to that. Understimulation might make you lethargic or sluggish, and but overstimulation can push you to like incredible lengths of behavior to get away from the things which are overwhelming you, and therefore I think it's the more important one to address.
Yeah, makes sense.
So people can be both. Let's talk about the last one next time, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks so much, James. See you later, everyone.